So, as Rabbi Ehrlich introduced and chanted so beautifully, the story of Jethro in this portion begins with him recognizing that his son-in-law, Moses, is wearing himself out. Why? Because he is dealing with every single conflict, every single issue of law among all the Israelites, and that makes for very, very long lines. And it's not good for Moses, and it's not good for the people, and honestly, it's not good for the system, for the law itself, for one person to be responsible for the entirety of that responsibility. And so Jethro very wisely says, Moses, look, I have an idea for a judicial system. And he creates this hierarchical system of different people who are appropriately suited to hear cases. And my question for you, because we are going to look at the verse, one verse, which describes the characteristics that Jethro thinks judges should have. So my question to you before we look at it is, what characteristics do you think those who work in the judicial system, and I would even extend it to say those who work in the area of law and government, what would you want, what kind of characteristics would you want them to have? Yes, Dee.
That they have the trust of the people.
Okay, so that's more, okay, I'm going to ask you another question. What would they be like to inspire the trust of the people?
That they might have gone to these people before and gotten good answers.
Oh, interesting. Okay, great. Anyone else? A characteristic that you would want to see among judges and people in areas of judicial leadership?
Wisdom and discernment.
Thank you. What would you say is how would you explain discernment?
It's being able to distinguish between things and being able to choose what's correct.
Okay, thank you. Great. Yes.
Honesty.
Say that again, please.
Honesty.
Beautiful. Love that. Yes. By the way, there are clearly many answers to this question. We don't have to choose, right? Anyone else want to suggest a characteristic that you would like to believe that your judges and lawmakers have?
Impartiality.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. You know, in synagogue, we don't do applause, but we can go like this if you agree. Right? Anyone else? Because in just a second, let's look and see what Jethro said thousands of years ago, okay? So if you have the sheet, and maybe people at home have it up on the screen, Jethro says to Moses, "You must seek out from among all the people." I just want to emphasize all the people, so this is nothing that is hereditary. Anyone has the ability to hold this kind of office, but here are the characteristics they should have. They must be capable, God-fearing men, men of truth who despise gain. So what I would like us to do is look at each one of these characteristics and see what they mean. Let's start with capable. Actually, this word, anshe chayil, it's sort of the most vague in the Hebrew. Has anyone heard of Eshet Chayil? That's a woman of valor from the book of Proverbs, a woman of valor who can find her price as far above rubies. So actually the Chayil that most of us are most familiar with is a woman. And in that passage, she's really described very much as a very capable homemaker who takes care of everything in her home, even outside of her home. She's a person who gets a lot done. But that's not the only example of Chayil. If we look and we see what Ramban says, does someone want to read this passage, the first passage? If not, I'll read it. An Ish Chayil in the administration of justice is one who is wise, alert, and fair. In war, an Ish Chayil is one who is strong, alert, and who knows the art of arraying forces in battle. A woman also is an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor, when she is alert and knows how to conduct the management of a home. So it can be used in terms of physical strength for someone on the battlefield. It is used for people who are kind of homemakers and taking care of a lot of things happening all at once. And Ramban's put these together and says it's somebody who is clear thinking, who is fair. I would say that that fits impartial. I would say that this requires discernment. If you have a list of 20 things to do, you have to know which one to do first. And it's someone who can see things with clarity, who's alert to what is happening, not lost in your own head or easily distracted. Does that sound so far like we're on target? Would you agree with Jethro that this would make a good judge, good characteristics for judges? I also want to add what the commentator Huzkuni adds. He says, men who are mentally able through the strength of their personalities to not be cowed by threats. It's interesting, right? It's an extension, I think, of the other kind of explications. But the idea is you are strong enough of body, of mind, and of will. You can't be pushed around by others, right? So now we have Yirei Elohim, one who is God-fearing. And this one, he's Kuni. You can tell who the commentators are that are a little more succinct in the way they talk and write. So Hizkuni again gets right to it. He says, men who only fear God, and then he adds, and not human beings. And in some ways, I think that's the more important part of being God-fearing, right? If you have that kind of respect and awe in God, it means you distinguish God from people. It means you don't have that sense that certain people are like God, or presume to be God, or have power over us like God, that you don't function around other people the way you would with God. And I simply want to point out that later in this portion, and I would also say, this is for another time, it's interesting to me that we first are introduced to the system of adjudication and the qualities of judges before we receive the law, which happens next in the portion. Then we get the 10 Commandments. It's almost like the Torah is telling us, before you can even deal with the law, you actually need to know that there are people who are worthy of that responsibility, right? But the first commandment is not really a commandment. It is God saying, Ani Adonai Elohechem, I am God. So really stamped into the 10 Commandments and the whole Torah is that no one, no human being is above the law. God creates the law, and therefore it distinguishes law from mortality. Mortals, we have to figure it out, we have to interpret it, we have to live by it, we can struggle with it, but none of us are above it. So I think that that's a bit of being fearful of God. We have Anshe Emet. We heard we wanted honesty to be one of the qualities. And I just want to, Rabbeinu Bachia goes even further than someone being honest. For him, it's someone who's got passion for and commitment to honesty deep in their bones. He says they must love truth as a value by itself, choosing to side only with truth. They must personify the principle expressed in Exodus 23:7, applying to judges. Keep your distance from anything deceitful. There's something really beautifully humble, I think, about this, that we are all human. I mean, because goodness knows, if every single person in any profession could be all these things all the time, I mean, that would be amazing, right? But inherent in this commentary is a striving to be. It's saying, I do love honesty, I'm passionate about truth, but I'm also human, so I try to stay away from things that might lead me down a different path, right? And I think that there's something really beautifully human about that. I just want to now also offer that in the book of Deuteronomy, when Moses is retelling all of these stories, and by the way, again, a sermon for another time, maybe when we get to Deuteronomy this year, this passage, he retells this story and doesn't mention Jethro. So, make of that what you will. But this is how he recalls this moment, and I think I want to hear it in the context of being a man of truth. I commanded your judges at that time, saying, adjudicate between your fellows and judge justly, whether between men, between brothers, or between sojourners. Do not show favor in judgment. Listen to the weak as well as to the strong, and do not fear any man, for justice belongs to God. Reflects back to what we were saying before about Yireh Elohim, right? That only God is justice. But the thing that I hear about honesty here is truth is its own value, and it doesn't matter who the people are that are embodying the case. That truth is something that can be discerned. It has to be distinct from power or compassion or wealth or relationship. Truth is its own value. Let's turn the page. We get to Son'ei Vatsa, those who despise gain. So, implicit in this is ill-gotten gain. Although some of the commentators, and I did not include it here, some of the commentators actually say that judges should not get paid at all. And I would say that, not to suggest that working as a judge and receiving a salary is ill-gotten gain, but just the idea that receiving any money would taint someone in this position. But let's see what Ramban says. He quotes other people. He says, Rabbi Yehoshua interprets the expression of hating botza as meaning hating bribery. And then he says, Onkelos rendered it, those who hate to receive money. But he's saying that these are being used in two different ways. There's an actual bribe where someone, a judge, is given money to sway their decision-making so that they're not impartial. But Onkelos is saying it's about money entirely. It means that they should never accept money from people as a gift or a loan, just in the event that they may ever encounter them in the court. So that's interesting, thinking about the Supreme Court right now, right? That it's not even about a direct bribe, but it's about never, ever receiving money or a loan from anyone if you are in this position, because the time may come when you are involved with adjudicating that person's case. There should be no favoritism in time of judgment. It is similar to what the rabbis have said. A judge who is in the habit of borrowing things from his neighbors is forbidden to act as a judge for them. I would just love to add this little parable from Talmud. The Gemara explains, Shmuel was once crossing a river on a narrow ferry. A certain man came along and gave him a hand to help him out of the ferry boat. Shmuel said to him, "What are you doing in this place?" The man said to him, "I have a case to present before you for judgment." Shmuel said to him, "Well, now I am disqualified from presiding over your case, as you did me a favor." What was the favor? He helped him out of the boat. He gave him a hand. It's like, imagine you're walking into a courtroom and you hold the door open and you turn around and the person who you held the door open for is your judge. If it was Shmuel was your judge, Shmuel would disqualify himself because now you have a relationship. So, now, I don't know how practical or realistic, but the idea that these are the values that we are striving for, the understanding that Jethro had, that the rabbis had, of how we are human and how we can be so easily swayed by power, by fear, by relationship, by need. We can't be perfect, but we can strive for these values. Sometimes it's hard to believe that there can be people who really live these values. And I would argue that this week, we have seen people who in living color have lived these values. And I want to hold one of them up, Danielle Sassoon, who is the former U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of New York. She resigned from her position because she was asked to dismiss a case against Mayor Adams, and she said herself that to dismiss this case, and now I'm quoting, it's not on your sheet, would be inconsistent with my ability and duty to prosecute federal crimes without fear or favor. She is showing clear thinking, strength of mind. She is clearly saying that no person is above the law, and she is rejecting any possibility of gain. She's just that this was wonderful for her career. It could have easily led to a judgeship. She gave it up because it would be tainted. She wouldn't be able to do her job in the way that she not only believes she is meant to do, but the way it's out of her own understanding of herself and of the law. If you can't serve the law the way it is to be served, then you have to step away. Here is a passage from her letter of resignation. I have always considered it my obligation to pursue justice impartially without favor to the wealthy or those who occupy important public office, or harsher treatment for the less powerful. I cannot fulfill my obligations, effectively lead my office in carrying out the department's priorities, or credibly represent the government before the courts if I seek to dismiss the Adams case on this record. She's not just talking about this case. She's saying if she did this in this case, she could not consider herself an appropriate adjudicator of the law. That is integrity. That is integrity. I would close because this is President's Week with this, I would really see it as a prayer to us, an inspirational prayer from President Abraham Lincoln. He says, "Let reverence for the laws be breathed by every American mother to the lisping babe that prattles on her lap. Let it be taught in schools, in seminaries, and in colleges. Let it be written in primers, spelling books, and in almanacs. Let it be preached from the pulpit, proclaimed in legislative halls, and enforced in courts of justice. And in short, let it become the political religion of the nation, and let the old and the young, the rich and the poor, the grave and the gay, of all sexes and tongues and colors and conditions, sacrifice unceasingly upon its altars." That is what Attorney Sassoon did, and I hope that I believe that she, as challenging as this moment might have been for her, is uplifted with the knowledge that she is living this truth that was articulated by President Lincoln, that is articulated in so many places in our country's legal commitments, in our very Constitution, and for those of us who are part of the Abrahamic tradition in our very earliest writings. May this be what prevails, this commitment to law, to honesty, to clear thinking, to discernment, to stepping away when we feel that we need to, so that the greater good is upheld. King Yehi Ratzon, may it be so.